Do you want to sit in a chair?
I think I'm gonna be okay, but if
Okay.
if it gets sore, is that alright? Maybe I should
Yeah.
grab one and just put one there in
I'll
case.
grab one.
Yeah.
That's actually my.
No, please be comfortable.
I bought this on Saturday.
Oh, okay, can you leave it in the kitchen?
Sure.
Or wherever you got it from?
Can I do it now? Just
Yeah.
Okay.
I wonder if I should. Thanks. Thank you.
So who was able to enjoy Doug's teachings while he was here?
Yes.
Did you go on the retreat?
So yes, the weekend, and then
Nice.
also we went for 3 days.
Nice.
It was.
Yeah. Well, a big part of tonight's class, because we're now on the chapter on meditation, does sing the praises of getting yourself into retreat. And really, Master Shantideva talks about the necessity of carving out time for yourself to do that. Because it's all fine and dandy to do the book learning and the philosophizing, which is crucial and important, but that can only take you so far. And then at a certain point, you have to allow yourself the time and space to go into a retreat setting where the stuff that you've been filling up with has a chance to really take root, and really become part of your felt wisdom and not just your intellectual information. So, congratulations. Beautiful. Okay, I feel like I haven't seen you guys in weeks.
No, I like that.
I missed you.
And I was a lucky one last Tuesday.
She took me up on my offer for tea for those of you who were in town.
That's
So.
good. Very juicy conversation. That's good.
Sashi Buki Jukshin Metok Drum Rira Blingshin Yande Gempadi Sange Shindu Mikte Uwargi Drokun Namdak Shingla Chupar Shok Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niratayami Sange Chudam Soki Choknamla Janchu Bardu Dakni Kyapsuchi Daki Jinyen Gipe Sunamgi Drola Penshir Sange Druparsho Sange Chudam Soki Choknamla Janchu Bardu Dakni Kyapsuchi Daki Jinyen Gipe Sunamgi Drola Penshir Sange Druparsho Sange Chudan Soki Choknamla Janchu Bardu Dakni Kapsuchi Daki Jinyen Gimpe Sunamki Drola Penshir Sange Druparsho.
So class 8, ACI 11 class 8. We're working our way through Master Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, which covers the 6 perfections, the 6 modes of behavior, but really it's 6 attitudes, 6 mental paradigms, if you will, that we're trying to cultivate and live by. And this class is the second of the classes on the perfection of contemplation or the perfection of meditation. Those are interchangeable. Geshe-la starts this class, if you do listen to the audio later, he starts this class by saying this is one of the most important classes we will ever have. I think he has said that a few times, but this is truly one of the most important classes. It's like I always say, well, this is my favorite. Right? It really is. But this is one of the most important classes, truly, because mostly it's not about convincing us. It's about not only telling us, but it's about giving us the logic behind a really beautiful concept. And to grasp this concept, try to imagine what it would be like if you cared about everyone else, all the other people in the world, in the universe, if you cared about others just as much as you cared about yourself. Like, close your eyes for just a sec, and just, even if you don't have an answer to that, try to imagine what it would be like if you cared about others as much as you cared about yourself. And keep your eyes closed. Think about the last time you did something really good for someone. Maybe you visited a sick friend or gave comfort to someone who was in some sort of anguish. Try to capture not the storyline behind that event, but what you felt like when you knew you were really, really helping. There's some kind of this undeniable, holy feeling, this love that arises in your heart. Just kind of tap into that for a sec. Now get some kind of instinct on how that would feel if you could feel like that, if you could do what caused that and feel like that all the time. If you could really care about others as much as you care for yourself. Okay, you can open your eyes. That wasn't a full-on meditation, but it's nice to stop and do that type of a contemplation. But that is basically the crux of this whole class. We can go home now. We're back actually in this class to Geshe-la giving us some beautiful, beautiful translations. So we'll be doing some more contemplations throughout this class. But the main reading, Master Shanti Deva asks us to listen to the back of your heart, to listen to the back of your mind, and the mind is here, right, in Asian traditions. The back of your mind, try to feel the sweetness that comes from looking after others. Not because you have to, but because your heart just leaps out to them, right? And what we're learning, what Master Shanti Deva's guide, it's a Buddhist book, gives us an actual method. It says, do this, do this, do this, do this, just do that, and you'll get there, right? That's what a Lam Rim is, steps to the path to enlightenment. It lays out each step. And it's almost like a wayfinder map in a mall or something, or in a city with the arrow saying, you are here. And if you want to be here, then this is the way you have to go, right? So, like that. What's really interesting is that this logical projection of steps, there's two significant milestones. One is seeing emptiness directly, which is perceiving ultimate reality in a non-conceptual state directly. And the other is this caring for others as much as you care for yourself, and it's called bodhicitta. It's this great, visceral love, true love for all beings. And Master Shanti Deva, this is actually all we're going to talk about for the rest of the meditation part of this course. You thought you were in a class on meditation, right? Well, this whole thing is going to be about compassion. We're not in the perfection of kindness right now. We're in the perfection of meditation, right? He's going to sneak the whole second part of this chapter. In fact, he's not even going to, never in this chapter does he say, sit in a lotus position, or half lotus or no lotus. Sit with your spine straight, your hands down. Like the 7-point posture is not taught here. You have to go to another source to learn that, because there is a formal 7-point posture for meditation, but it's not from Master Shanti Deva's chapter on meditation. He does not say, make sure you've got a good meditation seat. Make sure that your back is a little bit higher than your front. Doesn't say any of that stuff. Doesn't say count your breaths or watch your, thoughts, or get in touch with the gross level of your body and then move more subtle. Doesn't say any of that stuff. You need to learn those technical things elsewhere. What he does do, he does talk about, and we did that in the first part, he talks a lot about the mental conditions that we need to do, that we need to prepare. He talks about the state of mind, right? We talked about that all-day meditation, the office meditation, And remember, we needed both. We needed the all day, what I call like the living practice, and you need the cushion time. You need the retreat time, right? You need both. And he was telling us that as advice for how to get into this meditative state. And he spoke about the platform that we need to reach to see emptiness directly. And he talked a lot about the two main problems that we're going to face, the dullness and agitation. So he's taught us what to watch out for, what we need to do to prepare our mind. He really talked about isolation last class, both mental and physical. There was that social isolation, that was a third one, right? And what that meant was like to declutter our mind, like to withdraw from so many sensory stimuli, even in the day-to-day stuff. And then the physical isolation was when you do take yourself into retreat, take yourself out of the city, take yourself to a quiet place, right? He's talked about all of that, but he's never actually talked beyond that about, what your meditation cushion should look like, what you should wear, what you should eat. Doesn't get into any of that stuff. He basically prepares our mind, gives us advice for where we're supposed to put our body, and then immediately segues into what we're supposed to meditate on. And that's the whole second half. And Geshe-la was really curious about how he makes that leap. This is the perfection of meditation. Where in this chapter does he make that segue? And it's in Contemplation 13, where to devote yourself to meditation. So I'm going to get you to just assume a contemplative position, and I'll read this to you. Okay. This is where to go to meditate. We spend our days in gentle walks and thoughts of helping others, here in the silent peace of the forest, flowing in soft breezes. We live doing as we please in our mansion of a wide flat rock, cool with the touch of moonlight and sandalwood scent of the holy, living deep within the woods of peacefulness, completely emptied of conflict and afflictions. We live where we please, as long as we like, in abandoned houses or caves or else at the foot of a tree. We have given up the suffering of owning and protecting things. Carefree we live, relying on nothing. Okay, so this is very, very descriptive, actually, but because it's poetry, there's a lot packed into a few lines of verse. He basically has explained a whole classical description of how to do a formal retreat in those few lines. So I'm going to unpack it for you a little bit, because it's kind of like getting a zip drive. I just gave you the zip, and then you have to unpack it, right, to understand what it says. So this whole thing about spending our days in gentle walks and thoughts of helping others, thoughts of helping others here in the silent peace of the forest, blah, blah, blah. It's about, that is about taking yourself out of the city. That is taking yourself out of your normal environment, right? And going to a nice place in a forest or a desert or someplace remote. The cave, the rock, traditionally people did meditate in caves, but that you don't have to. It's not about the specifics of the place, but these are more metaphors, right? But when he says cool with the touch of moonlight and sandalwood of holy, it's so beautiful. He is talking about it's very, very auspicious to meditate where there have been holy beings, or where holy ritual or holy practice has taken place. If any of you have had the chance to come to where my lamas did their 3-year retreat on Gabriola, you have, right? And you can feel it. You walk
absolutely.
in those gates, and you can feel the serenity, and there's an energy. Geshe-la in this audio talks about he's met His Holiness the Dalai Lama, like personally, more than once, and he says there is a scent.
Mhm.
There is a scent of virtue on that holy being. And even when he leaves the room, it's palpable. It's morality. It's the smell of morality and ethics, and it's palpable in the room. And this, and I've even sensed it even before my teachers went into retreat. The first 5 lamas that went into retreat, the one on the very second to the left, Lama Ora, she's the youngest of the group. She came to Vancouver, several years ago, and she's not very. She's a very quiet. She's not quiet in the sense of shy quiet, like doesn't want to talk to you. She doesn't need to say very many words, and you can feel her as soon as she walks into a room, and it's just this sense. It's like getting a big hug, and she hasn't even touched you. There is just something that comes from profound, deep practice, pure practice. And so a place that has been used for other retreats or such, right? Or a place where, like Bodhisattva vow ceremonies, like if this place was not in the middle of a busy urban street, it would probably be a great room to meditate in for a long period of time. As it is, when we do our shamatha days here, it's a beautiful place to retreat, right? Even right smack in downtown Vancouver, basically, which this is turning into. So like that, there is this beautiful, so when he talks about sandalwood and moonlight, it means that you should meditate somewhere where holy beings have gone before. And I love that scent of, that sweet scent of morality. Apparently it smells a little bit like sandalwood. And then living deep within the world of peacefulness is a bit of a pun on a commentary we received from Gyaltsab on Master Shanti Deva's, where he was talking about, destroying the 2 extremes, and that was destroying dullness and agitation. So that's what this deep within the woods of peacefulness, like literally, it's in a quiet forest, but more importantly, beyond the literal, the deeper meaning is that line is talking about extricating yourself from the 2 distractions to meditation. And then the line where he says, we live as we please and as long as we like, this is about the liberation, the sense of freedom that comes from having removed yourself and surrendering to an extended period away from your so-called normal life. This, when you do go into like a silent solitary retreat, of course you need to have proper shelter and food, and there is a caretaker system, but really you cut yourself off from the world, and quite frankly you could die out there and nobody would find you for a while. It's like it's happened, and it's the type of not to make it sound scary, but it is that type of release that you do. Like you do sever yourself from the world and you surrender to the process. And in and of itself, that is very, very liberating. For the first little while, your mind is going to be quite chaotic with, that process of letting go. And then sooner, and it's because you've gone to a place where you're making no plans. You have nothing to check in on. There's you're not trying to think about where to go for dinner or who to call next, or like there's none of that going on, or what you should be doing at work. Like all those thoughts start to melt away. And it's interesting. This is why Geshe-la says that we really should build ourselves up to meditating for at least 2 weeks, because it takes that amount of time to clear the chatter, and then your mind doesn't know what to think about, and then it can get quite lonely, actually, because your mind is trying to fill itself, right? But it's when you get to that point of surrender that you can start to really do the work, and there's a real freedom to that. What I love about 1 month retreats, because it actually is very structured, actually, is that there's no question about what you have to do tomorrow. Like it's pretty much a no-brainer, and in that way, your brain is freed up, your mind is freed up for other things. Now, you could, because it's also the time when your worst obsessive tendencies or kleshas are going to rear their ugly little heads. So, you have to be very good with your awareness and your bringing your mind back, because you could actually then just single-pointedly focus on the person you're mad at work, or the partner who didn't say goodbye properly to you before you went into retreat, or whatever, right? Like, you could obsess because our mind wants to hang on to. It's like, no, don't make me surrender, right? So there is the two kind. We have to give up the two kinds of suffering. There is that line, right? We have given up the suffering of owning and protecting things. And the two kinds of suffering that are referred to there, it's not the sufferings as we know, the suffering of change, all pervasive. Those are the way we normally talk about suffering, and those are correct, but that's not the two kinds of suffering here. Specifically, this verse is talking about, one, the suffering of wanting something you don't have. So in retreat, maybe wanting the companionship of your partner, or wanting better food, or wanting a warmer sweater, or whatever. They say you should take in everything you need, and that nothing should leave your meditation. Like, you shouldn't. The most difficult thing about retreat is to not let your mind leave your meditation space, because your mind is going to want to go back to your life or to your office or to whatever, right? And to keep it in that boundary, in that song. So this suffering of wanting something, we want money, we want relationships, we want objects, we want certain positions or status or a degree. We're all trying to get something, right? And we let that suffering go when we go into retreat. The other suffering is, once you get something, then the suffering of having to protect it, of not wanting to lose it, right? This happens with jobs. You're wanting a promotion, and then you get it, and then you're anxious about keeping it because there's other more talented younger people coming up the ranks that want your job. Like that. It's the two types of sufferings. And when you go on retreat, you leave that all. You let it go. You're free of those two kinds of suffering, at least for the time that you're in retreat, right? So that's what that verse was about. Okay, so that was just a warm-up. Here's where he makes the real leap. So assume your position again. This is Contemplation 14. What to meditate on: the service of others. Think of these considerations and others as well. Contemplate the benefits of isolation. Put an end to useless thoughts and meditate upon the wish for enlightenment. From the very beginning, exert yourself in the practice of treating others and yourself the same. When the happiness and the sufferings are the same, then you will care for all just as you do yourself. So that's where he shifts gears from how your mind should be, getting yourself into a retreat, meditating off the cushion all day, to compassion. Okay? He's actually given us a very specific contemplation here. Caring for others exactly as you care for yourself, right? So, again, the benefits of isolation, putting an end to useless thoughts. Useless thoughts. The mind is always thirsty for something to think about. The mind will always grasp to useless thoughts. So when you let go of all those useless thoughts, then there's this vacuum, there's this empty space, and Master Shantideva is saying, fill that up with compassion. Okay? And it is really a beautiful way to do retreat. There's so many things that you can contemplate, and I know this last one with Doug was really exquisite on the 4 principles of mindfulness, and prior to that he led a whole retreat on shamatha, although this one is built upon the shamatha practice. in some of the esoteric retreats, they're actually mantra retreats. So you are reciting a mantra 100,000 times before you come out. Now, there are contemplations that go with that, but there's, you're busy doing stuff, right? I had the exquisite luxury of doing a retreat that was based on a really exquisite ancient Buddhist contemplation that Jetsun Kappa taught, and it actually is heavily, heavily laden with compassion, and got to do just that for a month once, and it seriously is exquisite to do some kind of meditation on compassion. And they also say if you're busy into your emptiness studies, and there are several ACI courses like the Diamond Cutter series, for example, where it's very, very much about emptiness, and all the contemplations are about emptiness. Or if you're studying Ari Nagarjuna and you're seriously contemplating that nothing exists the way you thought it did, right? It's not that things don't exist, they just don't exist the way you thought they existed. And when you get into those, it can get really spacey and out there, and they're exquisite. But they say whenever you do any of those, you should always start with a quick compassion one, be it Tonglen, which is the giving and taking, or be it, thinking about all the people you're grateful for and love, or anything like that, because it's a protection for your mind. And in fact, am I jumping ahead? I don't care. I'm going to tell you now. When you're in retreat, I don't know how much formal retreat prep Doug taught you, setting up your boundary markers and your tsam. Did you go into any of that? No, okay. When you're doing a solitary retreat, you set up, or if any of you get to the Jetsun Kappa 1,000 Angels of Bliss meditation, it's an open meditation retreat to the Ganden Gama, which is actually a really great warm-up to the more esoteric retreats, because you do recite the Jetsun Kappa mantra and you do a series of visualizations. Anyways, when you actually go into retreat like that and you're by yourself, because you were in a group setting, right? So it's a little bit different. When you're by yourself, you should set up your boundary, and you actually physically do it with boundary markers in all the directions, or the 4 main directions. And then you do this contemplation. And also, if you're out in the forest alone, even if you have a caretaker, it can be a little spooky with the sounds and the, and actually your own mind terrorizing you, right? So there are different protection circles, we call them, protection type contemplations that we do, especially at the beginning of retreat and anytime you're feeling anxious. And inevitably, every single variation, there's many, many variations of these, so I'm not going to go into the detail because this isn't the class to teach you that, but in all of the variations, there is one common denominator. The thing that activates a protection circle is love. Actually, I will teach you a quick one, because this is a good one if you can't sleep, or if you're in a place where you're a little afraid to sleep. Set up a circle around whatever your space is. Like it could be your room, or it could be your apartment, or it could be your block, or, but make it manageable for your mind. And set up a string of your favorite people, like all your teachers. You could throw in the Dalai Lama, or Gandhi, or Mother Teresa, or Jesus, or anyone in there. But it does help to make them as real for you as possible, and create this string of people, like they're your protection circle in a way, but that's not all. You then beam love to all of them. Like you charge up that power battery, that protection with your love. It's a really cool way to do it. And that's not in the regular course, but since we're talking about it, it's just a nice way. It's also a really beautiful recommendation, because I have a lot of people who come to me and say they can't sleep. And, I don't teach this one to people that much, but I know that you guys do a lot of yoga and a lot of work, so it's a nice one to remember. Okay, moving on. 2 different methods to get to bodhicitta, actually. So he's talking about, right? He's talking about the practice of treating others and yourself the same. This is called Dakshen Nyampa. Say Dakshen.
Dakshen
Nyampa.
Nyampa.
we teach something here called Daksha Nyam, and this is also from Master Shantideva. That one is Daksha Nyam is exchanging self for others. This is you and the other are exactly the same. So there's a subtle difference there, but these are both practices from Master Shantideva. And he says, we actually need to have kelwa. Say kelwa.
Kelwa.
You need to have, kelwa means spiritual goodness. You need to have kelwa to even be able to hear the words bodhicitta or dakshanyampa and have it mean something to you. Like to actually even be curious about what that means requires this kelwa. It's spiritual goodness. And so duck, right? We've talked about duck before. Duck is the self, the me. Remember that self-existent being that created everything? Duck. Shen means other people. Nyampa means exactly the same. So how you treat yourself and other people exactly the same means to be as concerned about their suffering as your own. Okay? Daksha Nyampa. So it's not about looking at someone's suffering as if it were your own. It's looking at them and seeing you and understanding that their suffering is your suffering. We're going to unpack that a little bit more right now. Because, of course, the minute Master Shantideva says that, there's an objection. In all of these types of teachings, it's usually taught almost in a form of debate, where the master will say something, and then this kachik, we call it kachik in Tibetan, and kachik actually just means the opponent, or the, and it sounds like it's somebody else, but kachik is really what the opposing resistance that comes up in our minds. And so these ancient teachings are great because they give us our own arguments and then the master answers them. Okay? So actually let's do one quick contemplation before I get into that. This is Contemplation 15. They are part of you too. Here are many separate parts, the hands and all the rest, but we dearly care for all of them as a single body. Just so shall I work for the happiness of every different being, treating all as equal, all as one, thinking of their joy and pain as if it were my own. So now that he has said to us, the secret to the perfection of meditation is what you're meditating on, and what you need to meditate on is compassion, and specifically seeing others exactly as yourself, seeing their pain as yours. The first objection that comes up is, well, there's many separate, like how is it that we care for so many beings? Because according to Buddhist cosmology, we're only one of 6 realms in samsara. And we can only see humans and animals, but there's many, many other beings that we may not be able to see, but that doesn't mean they're not there. And if you think of the whole universe, there's many, many planets. And, basically your mind can spin out and thinking, oh God, how could I be everybody else? There's too many of them. And so Master Shantideva is saying, basically his argument, right? Here are many separate parts, the hands and all the rest, but we dearly care for them all as one body. So he says to Kachik, how many feet do you have? 2. How many hands do you have? 2. How many fingers and toes do you have? Well, 10 each, and it's okay, that's 20, that's 24, and you have a head, and you have, and it goes on and on. So you have many, many parts, but you treat them all as one being, one you. Oh yeah, because if someone comes at my baby finger with a knife, I'm going to pull away. And then Master Shantideva launches into the famous, and Lama Murud has done this, one or many argument. Are you one or are you many, right? And really, you can, and another way I've heard this one told, not in this particular class, but it comes from this passage, is because it is Master Shantideva giving the same logic to someone who says, I can't look after everybody because there's too many of them. And they're not me. And he'll say, well, it's the argument, those are two separate arguments. There's too many of them, and they're not me, are two separate. So we're going to deal with there's too many of them right now. And he says, this body thing. So if you were to stub your toe, you wouldn't say, oh, that toe isn't me, it can look after itself. Your hand would go to help your toe, right? If at the same time you got a splitting headache, you would be able to reach for a bottle of medicine, Tylenol, Motrin, whatever, right? Advil. You would be able to while you were still nursing your toe. If at that same time you had the thought that you were thirsty, you could then go and have a drink. Like you could look after all these many, many different interests, many different parts calling for attention, and it would be no problem. And if on top of that, you could keep going, right? There would be more and more and more things happening to the numerous parts of you, and your capacity to look after that is limitless. And he says, other beings are no different than that, actually. Like you choose to pay attention to these parts of your body. It's a decision. You've drawn a line that delineates that you extend as far as your skin. And actually, Geshe-la goes on to say, and I totally believe this, we extend ourselves to our possessions. Because if someone tries to take your laptop, it becomes a personal affront, right? Or if, I think guys are worse for this, but if someone keys your car, like that's pain, right? Especially if it's a new car. We've extended ourselves to our possessions. And so basically, this whole thing about where we end, this is actually what Master Shantideva was trying to get us to understand. He's trying to get us to understand why we put up boundaries the way we do, and where do we end. And this, actually, I don't even know if we're going to get into it tonight, but this is actually crucial for world peace. Because the whole thing, what's going on right now in the Ukraine, what's going on in Afghanistan, it's all about boundaries that have been set up by individuals, right? This arbitrary, like even the border between Canada and the U.S. or the U.S. and Mexico. Sure, there's border crossing stations that have been put up to say this is one and this is the other. But seriously, if you look at the land, there's no line, right? It's arbitrary. Like we've made the decision. So that's how it is with people too. So the real question embedded in this is, where do I end and where do you start? Where does me end? Right? Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. It's good to cough it all out, actually. No, it is. It's good to not keep it in. So, right, back to this many, many parts. Master Shantideva says it's a mental decision. It's a mental concept, but it is forced upon us by our karma. So we have the karma to see ourselves as ending here. We have the karma to be possessive about our parts and not so concerned about others. But karma is habit, right? It's something that we can change. So we just have to decide, even if we can't see it yet, that we're going to expand our boundary and then start small. Remember that potatoes thing? Like, don't pull out your eye if you're not ready. Like, start with carrots and potatoes. So start with something small. Start with something modest, and then keep practicing. Keep doing a little bit every day. This is very Shantidevian. And it's you keep working your mind, and you will be able to convince yourself that there's no reason why yourself has to stop here. I've said this before, but mothers are really good about this. They can extend themselves up almost immediately to their child, right? And it's something that just happens for the most part. I mean, in the Western world, sometimes I say that and they go, "Well, I hate my blah blah blah." It's like, but for the most part, right? It's. I mean, I see it in my friends who have had babies. It's like They all say, bar none, I've never known I could be so in love. And they are all in love with their partners, but once that little creature comes out, it's like this other unfathomable love that happens, right? So that's a really great thing that we can observe too. But back to this, Master Shantideva is saying it's just a decision. But then the next objection, the next Mr. Kachik says, okay, but wait a minute. Of course there's a difference, because if you cough, my throat doesn't tickle, right? So it's not the same. I can't, or if you get a massage, I don't get the, like, it doesn't work that way. That's the second projection. What is it?
Objection.
Objection, thank you. I was trying to say protest, and you know what I mean. So this is going to be the next argument that comes up, and the contemplation is called What Makes Pain Mine? But before we get into that, let's see. No, let's just go right into that. Because the first argument, right, was that there's too many of you. I can't be you because there's too many of you. And then Master Shantideva says, but wait a minute. Of course you can look after limitless things, actually. Just look at your own body. Look at all the things you can look after at once, right? And it's just a decision. And so then, yeah, but your pain isn't my pain. If you get cut, I don't bleed. And so here, try this one on. Okay. Contemplation 16. Suppose you object and say that your pain never hurts the body of another. Even so, your pain is something you can't bear for just one reason. You're grasping to yourself. Just so, even though it's true that sufferings others feel never come and strike you, still it is your suffering, since you'll find them hard to bear once you grasp to yourself. So this is interesting. That almost sounds like a riddle. It almost sounds like, I thought there was no self. Why are we talking about a self, right? But, so, it opens though, right? My pain can't affect you and your pain can't affect me is how it starts. But this is the interesting part. Finding the suffering hard to bear. See, when something is unbearable, it means I have to do something about it now. Like you can't bear to let it go on, right? And when it is, this is back to this boundary, this boundary that we call our own body, or maybe it extends to our possessions. But let's just stick with the body. Like this boundary that we, it's so tangible. It's so real. Like it really feels like you're separate from me. It really does, right? Can you feel that? Right? So, right? It's just like, how silly is this, it seems. But the thing is that, actually, you were a perfect example. She coughed and you whinged. Like you were, and you immediately went to get her water, right? So it was, and actually I do actually have a bit of something here, so I could feel you too. But this is not normal, okay? It's, but this is actually what we're trying to get to. As bodhisattvas, remember I said it's a karma to not feel it? It's also a karma to feel it. Like the better we get at looking after other people's needs, the better we will be at intuiting, at sensing, at being able to read when someone else is in discomfort and knowing what they need, or at least guessing what they might need. And the better we get at that, the more accurate we become too, right? So here's the thing. No, you can't feel my pain, and I can't feel your cough. However, it is if I can decide that you're me, I can decide that you coughing is as unbearable as if I was coughing, and it needs to stop, right? Or something needs to happen. So that's another way of treating others and yourself exactly the same. So Master Shantideva would say, yeah, no, you can't feel each other's pain. You're different physical bodies in that sense. But that is a mental picture. That is a decision you've made by your past karma, which is forcing you to see it in that way now. And you can change that boundary. And you can change by practicing this thing about even if you can't feel it, you can choose to decide that that pain, no matter where you see it, is unbearable, whether it's in yourself or in another. That you can do faster than feeling their pain right now, right? And that's a decision. And when you make that decision, it's not a problem to do this taking on someone else, right? So that's the thing. If you decide that someone else is you, you do get very good at observing them. Because we're very good at observing ourselves, right? Like, I've got an itch here, or I've got a scratch there, or whatever. Like, we're very good about knowing what's going on with us, right? And we get much better at observing what's going on with others. We get sensitive to other people's... And the thing is, Master Shantideva always says practice. Now, I've called karma habit, because that is, we do things over and over, right? But get this, practice is karma. Okay? Practicing thinking a certain way creates the karma to be able to think that way. So practicing that someone else is you, just by that very practice, it creates the seeds that will enable you to truly manifest that, to truly feel that, and not just pretend, right? And practice works because of the laws of karma. So practice, this is so beautiful. Practice is just watching karma create something intentionally. See, karma's happening all the time anyways. We're just usually unconscious to it. And even though we're unconscious to it, we're still doing it, right? So this is like getting conscious about it. And with practice, we're planting the seeds with awareness, right? Because you know what, practice, we think practice is doing something over and over and over again. And that is part of it. But doing something over and over and over again is not the cause for getting good at something. Despite that theory of doing something 10,000 times or whatever, which is pretty good, because if you do it that many times diligently, what you've done is you've created the karma. Because someone could do it 10,000 times and not get that good. Mm-hmm. Right? So, why do some people try and learn something and can't? And other people, it takes hardly any effort at all. Right? Like, you've seen it I've seen it in, you think that this kid's got talent and this kid doesn't. And it's not in the trying hard, right? But even if one kid's got talent and one kid doesn't, that's not about whether they're good or bad. It's about the karma ripening for each individual being, right? So if practice made something perfect, then everybody who practiced exactly the same would be exactly the same perfect. And they're not. Some people are better than others at certain things. That's a karma. But the karma of practicing creates the karma of getting better at something. You see what I mean? So it's really interesting. The karma of trying is what makes something happen. And that's why they say fake it till you make it, right? Like, just act as if, what would Master Shantideva do? That's a good question. Like, in this situation, what would Master Shantideva do? And then just do that, right? It's the karma of practicing that makes it true. That's actually a really, really good, I'm giving you cheat sheets for meditation. So there's the protection circle. A really good one is if you're having a dilemma, especially if you have a guru, if you have a teacher, you see them, you confess your whole problem to them and say, Guruji, what would you do? Show me, what would you do? And you watch what they do, and then you go do that. That's the trick, is you go do that. That part is like, you want them to do it. But no. They'll show you, and then you have to go do it, right? But then it's really super easy because they've shown you what to do. So it's kind of cool. When this is also true with when we're battling our mental afflictions, right? When we're fighting. Remember, I said that even a 10-second fight against your own jealousy or anger is virtue, and it's because the fight, that little struggle, is the seed for being better at combating that mental affliction the next time. Okay? And so that's why you can overcome things like mental afflictions with practice, because you're collecting the karma through the practice to see it that way, to see yourself overcoming it. And it is possible. So, ethics, right? Buddhist ethics. Virtue. Virtue is 90% intention. The perfection of any of these perfections is not, like the perfection of giving is not giving everything away. It's not, actually. It's the intention, it's the desire to want to give everything that's needed. And, the same with this, the perfection of meditation is not being able to sit in the perfect lotus pose. It's the ability to completely exchange yourself with someone else. Completely. That's pretty cool. It's just the whole logic it's pretty out there. It's pretty wild, and that's why you need the kelwa. You need that virtue, that spiritual virtue, for any of this to make sense. Let's do another contemplation. This is the logical proofs for compassion and love. Contemplation 17. I must stop the pain of others because it's pain. It's like the pain that I feel myself. I must act to help all others because they're living beings. It's like the body that I own. That's pretty basic, right? It almost seems so simple it can't be true. I must stop the pain of others why? Because it's pain. Because it's pain and I don't want pain. It's just their pain is just like my pain, right? The way that it was said, I must stop the pain of others because it's pain, is like the pain I feel for myself. That's actually a syllogism. That's like what you guys do in debate, right? Let's consider pain, right? Or let's consider I must stop the pain. Because it's pain. It's like the pain that I feel myself. Those three parts actually hold, if you think about it. So this logic, this formal Tibetan Buddhist logic, actually formal Buddhist logic, was invented by Lord Buddha 2,500 years ago, actually. It's the same format. And what you could reword that, I must stop the pain of others, because in formal debate you always say consider this. So you can say consider the pain that other people feel. It is something that I should work to remove because it's pain. That's another way of saying what he just said. It sounds so simple, but it's actually it's so profound we can kind of miss it. It's whether it's someone else's pain or your own pain, if you still see them as separate, Master Shantideva says that we're just confused about the border. We're just unclear where that line is between yourself and another. If you think you're separate, you've still got a border there. And he's saying get rid of the border, right? Or expand that border so that it's not in between you and another, but it includes you and another. And what else is said in that syllogism is that suffering no matter whose suffering it is something that you have to fight. So it's kind of like that last one where someone else's pain isn't your own, but you could choose to find that as unbearable as your own. That's a choice. In this one, you can choose to fight suffering no matter where it exists. It's the same thing, right? And it actually does take some spiritual wisdom to be able to forget the boundary of what you call you and what you call me, and to accept that any suffering that anyone is feeling in this room is unacceptable. But that's where we're trying to go. That's where we're trying to expand ourselves out. Okay. So we can take this one step further. Let's consider other people's pain. It's something that I must take personal responsibility to remove, because it is pain. And then in debate, someone will say, well, prove it. Why is it pain? Because it's just like your own pain. Same thing. Pain is pain. And what it means is that it's that unbearable thing again. You find it unbearable. You cannot tolerate the pain, even if it's in another. Right? Because you're seeing them as you. So it is your pain, actually, right? When you see another as you. And we shouldn't tolerate pain wherever it's happening. That's basically the bottom line of that. Because we really are. We're trying to get to the point where another person's pain really is intolerable to us, too. Did we get there yet? Yeah, and the second part, I must act to help all others. Why? Because they're living beings. It's like the body that I own. So all others, really the only qualification to help them is that they're a living being. That's good enough, right? It's the only proof you need to explain why you should care. Because they're a living being. I think that's kind of cool, actually. So you must try in your life to bring happiness to other people, because it's the same thing as trying to make yourself happy. That's where he's going with this. It's exactly the same thing. And this is what we call Dakshin Nyampa. That's what we started out with, right? Say Dakshin?
Dakshin.
Nyampa.
Nyampa.
So this is creating, this is really great. Master Shanti Deva said, this is your new job. This is your new job to work to create happiness anywhere that it can be created. And it doesn't matter whether that happiness is in your mind or in someone else's mind. But that's what we're going to do. We're going to work to create happiness. And it's really cool, because if you're not limited to your own body, you can create lots of happinesses. I guess it's really kind of cool, right? Yeah. You're not limited by this so-called boundary of this so-called self. See, I like this one, because the other one is a little daunting. Like, I don't know if I can hug the whole universe. I don't know, right? But if I can make everybody happy, like, that would be really something to get excited about. So, but it's the same thing, it's just, and it does get that excitement quotient up, right? Like, if you could get as excited, and it's just interesting that this is meditation and not joyful effort. Remember, we had to get through joyful effort to get here, but you need joyful effort all the way through. Remember, that was the one that swung in both directions. Because if you are going to do this new job of ours, of trying to build happiness in minds of others, then it's going to take some effort, and it's going to take some joyous effort, right? So how radical would that be if you were just going around trying to create new happinesses and you are not bound by what you think you are calling yourself? Like, that's, we talk about random acts of kindness. I'm talking about radical acts of kindness, It's really, really cool. Here's the other thing. Imagine what would make someone else happy, especially if it's something you have to give up. So what this is talking about is that, say you want something for yourself, but you know someone else in your immediate world wants that same thing, and you give it to them instead, even though you want it for yourself, but you give it to them consciously because you're doing this new job of creating happiness in another mind. If you do get an opportunity to do something like this, do it and watch and see how it makes you feel. And again, practice. Start with carrots and potatoes, right? Like, don't give away the new BMW or whatever if that was your last penny and you can't, you know what I mean? Like, you're going to regret it the second later. But there are lots of opportunities in, you know what? I try and practice this one with praise on the job, credit. I try to give credit away. Because I've been the worst for, oh, I did that, like me, So I've been consciously trying to, and this is also working on the non-virtues of speech, like we're consciously trying to speak highly of others and giving them. Because people want that, right? People want to be well thought of. People want to be, if it's something that they truly did contribute to. Because people also don't like to be falsely, even though they may take it because they think they're getting, that's not a virtue. Like giving something but if they were helping you with something and you give them full marks for it and you praise them, that's an easy way to give away something that you would want for yourself. That's a good carrots and potatoes way. And that's just a personal thing that I find is a nice place to start in case you're wondering. But now that this is your new job, you'll think of lots of ways on your own. You can come report back and tell me what else that we could be doing. So, yeah, this is the radical happiness, right? I don't know how many of you came to my karma of love, but this is actually something that I taught there, and this comes directly from Master Shanti Deva. Whatever you want for yourself, if you can't give it away, at least share. But make sure someone else gets what, like if you want a partner for yourself, then work really hard for someone else to get theirs and be happy for them and rejoice in all of that. And that, I tell you, that's hard, but it works. And it's really, really, really cool to be able to actually try this out and watch it and see where it goes. And yeah, the happiness like quadruples. It doesn't just double, it does that. What do you call it when you put a 2 in the corner each time? Exponential. Thank you. It expands exponentially. It really does, and it has these far-reaching benefits, right? But that's usually the last thing you expect to hear out of a relationship talk or anything like that, But they say, Master Shanti, and even about money, right? Like, whatever you want for yourself, like, share. Or at least make sure someone else has the opportunity. Either give it away or at the very least share, is what this advice is. And it applies to everything. And it really does raise the happiness quotient all around. Back to that mini contemplation we did at the beginning, when you remembered the last time that you did something really kind for someone else. Like if you tap into that feeling of it's like a warm and fuzzy, right? Like there is this feeling. That's as pretty instant gratification as, like, that's pretty instant karma. Because we said there's no such thing as instant karma. But when we do stuff like that, we do get that hit. And that's pretty instant. And so again, we're trying to Master Shanti Deva was trying to explain to us how we can expand that 24/7. How we can be walking that walk constantly. But it does take practice. It's not easy. And sometimes we do have to convince ourselves that that boundary doesn't end here, because it certainly looks that way. Or it feels that way, right? Or we've lost our battle with our klesha, even though we tried, Yeah. So the last thing that Master Shantideva talks about in this verse, and we're not actually going to do it as the contemplation because it's not a very pleasant one. But we're going to get the commentary. Is the opposite. The opposite of everything he's been telling us. He's saying it's very, very wrong to do the opposite, and the opposite of thinking another is yourself and feeling their pain is your pain, or feeling their pain as unbearable, as if it were your own. The opposite is just to worry about your own happiness. And basically, Master Shantideva is saying, don't do that. Like, that is the worst possible thing you could do for yourself karmically and in your pursuit of becoming enlightened. You won't get there if all you're worried about is your own happiness. And this actually goes against the grain of consumer capitalism. It goes against the grain of Western education. It does. Because it's saying don't ever just look out for number one. Well, but it's actually not saying that either. But if you want to simplify it, it's about not just, because that is what modern culture tells us. Look after yourself. No one else is going to look after you, so you've got to look after yourself. What Master Shantideva wouldn't argue with that, but he's saying yourself is now, right? Yourself is not limited to this. Yeah! Look after yourself. You are now the entire universe. Look after yourself. But that's a whole different take. And that, again, is also very radical. It's not what modern society is teaching us. So Geshe-la, back in the 90s, was telling us exactly what Lamaji wrote in his book, be a spiritual damn renegade, right? Buck the system. Don't just buy into the me thing. Not if you're thinking of that me as ending at this boundary, right? But the radical part with Master Shantideva is it's okay to think me, as long as me has been expanded to include you. And you and you and you, right? So it's a whole different way of walking through our world. The last thing in, and we don't actually get the contemplation, but the last thing in tonight's class is one of the most famous stanzas out of Master Shantideva's book, and we have had this in other teachings particularly about bodhicitta. And it's the one where, and I'm just paraphrasing here, but it's the one where we say that I and other beings are exactly the same in that we both want happiness. And I and other living beings are exactly the same in that we don't want any kind of pain at all. And it's interesting, Geshe-la gave us all those exquisite translations of all those other contemplations, and we're not actually given this one, but this is a really famous one. This is the one that we think about when we think of Master Shantideva, and it really sums it all up. If we have any distinction, as long as we think that someone else's pain is different from our own and that we have to take care of our own pain, as long as we continue to think that way, we won't be happy. We can't be happy. And we will never be able to help others be happy, which is the whole point of bodhicitta, to help others to be happy, right? So don't do that. Don't do that. Even if you don't agree with how another person is trying to find their happiness, that is the ultimate equanimity. You are both trying to be happy. And in that you can agree, right? And the same thing about not wanting to be unhappy. We may disagree on what someone qualifies or says is unhappy for them. But it doesn't matter. It's still unhappy, and nobody wants to be unhappy. Nobody wants to be. I think it was actually His Holiness that talked about that in the context of Master Shantideva's teaching, that is the great equality across the board. Everyone wants to be happy. No one wants to be in pain. And that is the driving force between most of our ignorance. We're constantly grasping after things that we think are going to make us happy and pushing away things that we think are going to cause us pain, independently of ourselves in our own little bubbles, right? And Master Shantideva says, don't do that. Don't go there. Like, we have to understand that this is actually the logic for seeing everybody the same, because everybody wants to be happy and everybody wants to be free of pain. So that's the ultimate argument, really. And again, start small. Start with one little thing. Geshe-la says start tonight. Look at someone in this room and try to imagine what kind of pain they might have and what kind of happiness they want, and be a big fat karmic Santa Claus. Yeah. It's also good to give anonymously, because then there's no vested interest in self-interest for you, right? I actually find that modern society doesn't promote that either. I mean, when you donate, they give you the option of anonymous, but most of them ask, like, you have to actually fill out something, right? Most of them don't let you be anonymous, actually. Even though you can list anonymous on the public website, they still know that it came from you, right? So it's interesting about this anonymous thing. And then I work for a nonprofit charity, and seriously, on the donor side of things, the recognition is, not only is it an integral part of fundraising, and I admit recognition is hugely important. And even, we just did our great pledge, and we're a little behind on our recognition, but it's in progress, and we've got, undying gratitude for everyone who helped, and the recognition packages will be going out soon if they haven't already. That is important. I'm not saying that, but working at this nonprofit, I find it really interesting how much people need to see their name up on the wall. Like, they're scanning lists just to find their name. And you know what? It's because they're wanting the happiness, right? They're wanting, it's not even an ego thing. It's just that when they see their name, they get that little hit of, I did something good. But it astounds me how, if they don't see their name, how angry they get. It's like, but it's because we're attached. We're attached to the wrong thing. Is that giving bad? No. It's still, but it's dirty good karma in that way, right? So our task is to try and create happiness where we can. And so your new job is to create happiness in others. And if you need a little bit of inspiration, think of yourself as a karmic Santa Claus. And whatever, just have this in your heart that whatever they want, I will give to them. It's interesting, this week I had an opportunity to break this vow. Actually, it's not a vow, but it was really, really interesting to me how I got pushed to a point where I totally lost all of everything I'm teaching you. It just wasn't working. And I didn't lose it entirely, but I lost it for a split second. And I felt, this is what's interesting, once you know this stuff and you do something or say something that you shouldn't, it's as if someone hit me in the stomach. I hit myself in the stomach, literally, on an energetic level. And from anyone else observing me, they would not have known that anything had happened or that anything was amiss. And I didn't appear upset to anybody in my immediate world. But inside, there was a battle going on, because I knew that there was an incident that happened, and it has nothing to do with work. It has to do with my personal life. But there was something that happened, and I knew I was having a klesha battle. And I knew that it was a ripening. All these things. I teach this stuff. I knew what was happening as it was happening, but it was, I was ripe for a klesha storm. Not enough sleep, overworked, too much going on, all this stuff that they say not to do, right? And then it came down, and I did actually battle it really, really well for a good long time. But finally, and it was through emails and stuff, finally there was this one moment where I couldn't do it, and I knew it, and I threw in the towel, and I just crafted an email to send. I did rewrite it about 5 times, but I did hit the send button. And I actually still, at this point, don't regret hitting that send button, but I do regret the anger I felt around it. Like when I actually reread what I had said, it needed to be said. And actually, when you read it, you don't get any of the anger or stuff that was going on. Like I edited all of that out before I hit send. I knew enough to do that. But it was my own battle, and it was really interesting to observe. And it was all over and done with in, say, I think I caught it in half an hour, but that was a half an hour too long, let me tell you. And I know that is, it's stuff I'm still working to purify and stuff. But thank God I caught it, And so this week I am going to be doubly looking for opportunities to put happiness in the minds of others. But I tell you that story because it is a practice. And we're all trying, right? We're all working at it. And you're going to have good days. And no matter how good you get at this stuff, until that karma finishes ripening off, it's going to pop. And then when it does pop, all we can do is do our best to deal with it and not replant it, right? Just to finish up my little story, after that one message, there were still some back and forth with this other person, but it was interesting. I had my own little battle with myself, not with this other person, and I had resolved it with myself. And once I had resolved it with myself, everything else sorted itself out, So it's interesting. It is like what Geshe-la teaches the devil. And I don't know if you've ever heard any of his devil and his angel talks, but it is about the devil on one shoulder fighting the angel. And what it is our mental afflictions battling our own wisdom. And it's a battle that we're doing constantly. But tools like this help make it a little bit smoother, Anyways, enough about me. Any questions? Because that is class.
I kind of do have a question,
Yeah.
actually. I was a little concerned thinking of everyone as myself that I could intrude upon someone else's boundaries.
Explain a little bit more.
Well, like just imagining what they might want, for example. Like I'm not going to treat them just as them as I would myself because I don't know for sure that they want me to. So I don't know. I just sometimes, for example, maybe I see someone who might need help with something, but I'm even afraid to ask sometimes because some people would feel offended that I'm implying that they can't do it for themselves. These kinds of things. And I know you did say that as you practice it, you get better at intuiting what they want. But yeah, I guess that just came up.
It's a really good question. And especially if someone is physically disabled or actually you'll get this with aging people also. If they are angry that they're aging, then they won't want any help. Like they don't want you to give up your seat on the bus or whatever, right? Couple things to remember. The one is we're trying to develop what's called skillful means. It's a Bodhisattva trait, skillful means. And if we were perfected already, we would already be Buddhas. And we wouldn't have to be practicing this stuff, right? But if we're not yet, then it is a process. It is a path. And what we are doing is we're cultivating and developing skillful means. So we're not always going to get it right, but it comes back down to your intention. The other thing you have to remember is that there's a time gap between karma. So if you, in your best estimation and truly out of compassion, want to help, and you help, that is really amazing virtue. If it's not received well, that has nothing to do with your helping. Okay, wait a minute. It has nothing to do with your helping. So if they turn around and yell at you, that actually has nothing to do with your helping. And the fact that they yelled at you and you think you've made them more upset than they needed to be, those are different karmas, actually. So the good thing that you did by helping them will always result in good for you. You actually can't help anybody who doesn't have the karma to be helped, okay? But if they perceived it as a negative thing, and that wasn't your intention, then that is something, see, you're just a delivery system for karma that they would receive anyways. And you cannot actually interpret their getting mad at you and you feeling bad about it. You feeling bad about it is not coming from them either, yelling at you. Okay? This is the tricky part about karma. There is a time gap between the good coming back to you, and even though, it's good you're trying to do for them, if they're not in a position to receive that in that karmic moment for them. The other thing is, now this is a higher level, is you don't actually know who they are. They might be an enlightened person, an enlightened being, pretending to be handicapped or troubled in some way, and they're there so that you can do this virtue. And they're there to yell at you to see how strong you are in your conviction to do virtue. And are you just going to tuck your tail and go running for the hills because now your feelings are hurt? You know what I mean? There's different, and that's hard. I'm giving you a whole lot of information over something that might happen in 30 seconds, and you're going to feel crappy because you just tried to do something and it wasn't well received, right? And you're going to feel bad that maybe you overstepped your bounds or whatever. But if your intention to help was truly motivated, then that in and of itself is a good thing. The rest of it is karma ripening from something else, and then you deal with it. Just like I had to deal with my issue this week. And so it's this combination of good karma, bad karma, that we get confused because we think that the thing that immediately preceded something was the cause. We think that by helping them or trying to caused their anger or their distress, and it's not. That's the complicated thing. So, but yeah, we don't always know what's best. But even at the basic level, your intuition is usually pretty good. Like if you're hesitating in helping, you have to actually look at your hesitation. Like, what's the root of your hesitation? Are you afraid that it's going to be like if you're really afraid to do something wrong, then you have to think about, well, what am I trying to do here? It does all boil down to the motivation and the intent. And that intent, if you're trying to help, that is always a good. Like trying to give someone something to help them is never a bad thing. And if they're not able to receive it, then it's not that you did something wrong. But it's a hard one. It is a hard one. Yeah. But in terms of knowing when it is appropriate or not, that is hard. And that's where the skillful means comes into place. And that's where, you kind of have to, it's sometimes through trial and error, too,
I come across a situation where people, there seems to be, what I've noticed is that if people are giving because they're looking for approval or love, then they sometimes associate the disappointment that comes from that kind of giving with giving.
Yes.
When it doesn't come from the giving,
Exactly.
it comes from the seeking, the craving from being satisfied outside.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's another way to look at it too. Because that actually is the flip side. Like if you give and someone, like if I give you a banana, you didn't want a banana and you throw it back at me, right? But I really thought I was doing a good thing and I actually wanted you to be happy I gave you a banana, right? Then I'm going to be hurt because I think that you just dissed me.
Mm-hmm.
But those things are so not related. But my motivation for giving you the banana was not pure.
Yeah.
It was motivated by my need to feel good about myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the reason for giving. But we learn that. I just said, Master Shanti Deva said, do this and you're going to feel great. So, of course, this is ultimately why we're doing it. But, see, this is the tricky part. There is another teaching, not in this particular context, but it's come up before, called the 8 worldly thoughts. And this is another thing that I find is useful to keep in your Buddhist toolkit. And the 8 worldly thoughts are the cause of our suffering. And basically, I'm not going to say it in the right order, but it's basically that we feel good when we're liked. We don't feel good when we're not liked. We feel good when people speak highly of us. We feel bad when people criticize us. We feel good when we feel good. We don't feel good when we're ill. You know, there's another one. But it's like that. And so those are the types of motivations that are often what is coloring our actions or our thoughts when we think we're helping or when we're trying to. So this is where the skillful means, and it's not so much that we get more skillful at helping, like opening just the right moment. We get more skillful at managing our own minds. So then we do know when to open that door at the right moment. But it's not about, because it's not about us anymore. But it's really hard to get out of our own way. And it's really hard not to be hurt or to feel badly or to think, oh, I did something wrong. You know, if whatever we thought we were doing a good thing and it's not well received. Yeah. But often if we look at our motivation, for any time, I mean, what Farah just said is true of any experience where we're left feeling kleshik, any experience where we're left feeling either defensive or hurt or dismissed or like any of those things, it's really important to look at our motivation. Like, what were we wanting out of that exchange? Like, what would have had to have happened for us to feel happy? And often it's attention. Often it's recognition or praise or reward of some kind, you know? And so in a way, when those negative reactions happen, if we're a studying Buddhist, an intelligent Buddhist who can actually look at that and try to find the real underlying cause, it's actually really good when stuff like that happens, because then we have to analyze. Because actually, as you practice more, you are going to get more skillful, and everything's going to be happening perfectly, and people are going to be grateful and you know, like thinking you're the Bodhisattva of the universe. And we have to be careful at that point. That remember that pride doesn't turn into ego. There was that lesson that Master Shanti Deva gave us before too, because the people who are going to be pissed off at us are going to be fewer and farther between, and we're not going to get those teachings of, wait a minute, Missy, check your ego. Like, what's going on here, right? So it's a constant practice, actually. But the thing to remember is that no good goes unwasted. It doesn't. It may not feel like it in the moment, and no bad either. So, you know, that's where we're trying to mitigate the opposite and just cultivate this way of thinking. But the whole exchanging thing isn't easy, but it's really good to work at it. And as I said, you know what, get enough sleep, get enough rest, and don't be overly taxed, because then you're ripe for not having that sense of awareness, right? Yeah. And everybody needs to take a banana.
They're organic.
They are, and they are very, very lovely. And if you don't want it, you can give it to someone else who may be needing one. So take one and pass it along.
Exactly fine, right?
Alhamdulillah, perfect.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you. Hi, Joel. Do you remember Michael, who's here on the Karma workshop?
Yeah.
He sent an email up for Jesus Christ Superstar.
Oh, he's performing in it.
I went.
Mm-hmm. I never got that email.
Oh no, I went, and it was unbelievable.
Good.
He was fabulous.
He's Peter. Yeah.
He's Peter, and he emailed Thursday night, I guess, and Friday I emailed back saying, oh, tickets were sold out almost, like 80% by then. I'm emailing and leaving messages at the church where it's hosted. I didn't get anything back until Saturday night, and we were hoping to go Sunday, the last night. After 10 o'clock, this woman calls and says, we have 2 tickets left, and they happen to be in the front row.
Wow.
And
you went.
and so I asked my mother-in-law to come, and we went, and we got there early enough to get the best seats in the house.
Yes.
Right there, center front, because we're in pews, and so if you get early, you get to go right to the center, and there's only 2 rows of pews. We left there speechless, and Michael was fabulous. Jesus was gorgeous. I was like, oh my God, blue eyes. And anyway,
I'm glad you went.
and
I
Peter's-
didn't get that email.
and Michael said, I'll wait for me. I'll come out after. It takes me 10 minutes to get dressed. He was amazing, and what a kind man, and how I was blown away at this performance. I mean, I love Jesus Christ Superstar anyway. It's sort of every year I kind of seek it and see if there's anything around. I always miss. Like, oh, that was like last.
So is it over now?
Sadly, the last night was the Sunday.
Oh,
It
I'm
was on
glad
for
you
a
got there.
Very, very short time. I said, you guys, you should have had this for like 2 weeks running. But it was phenomenal. I was blown away. Judas was incredible. Jesus was. There he was, And after the show, I went, "Is that Jesus?" I go over there, and
Well, let's dedicate to
sorry.
Michael and his
Yes.
karma.
Michael.
His beautiful karma.
Yeah, Michael, he was amazing. So I thought,
Sashi Puki Jukshin Metok Drum Rira Blingshin Yende Gempadi Sange Shingdu Mikte Uwargi Rokun Namdak Shingla Chuparsho Iram Guru Ratna Mandala Kamniratayami Gewadi Gewokun Sunam Yeshe Sotokshin Sunam Yeshe Lejumwe Dambai Kunyu Toparsho.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
I won't be here next week.
Yes.
So, Leonarda will produce. And then